Hi there, my name is David Banyachak, your building capacity coach. I felt led to create this message for individuals and for corporate leaders. This is both a personal and a corporate message on dealing with extreme uncertainty. Never before in my lifetime, which spans several decades, have I seen uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic across the world spread its tentacles so far and so deep. And I see it in the people around me, and you see it on the news, you see it all over the place. And so I think this particular presentation, this video, this message is both timely and relevant, and I hope that you find it so. When it comes to uncertainty, it is an interesting thing. And so I dug up some quotes on uncertainty, and it's going to kind of frame the message that I want to give to you, both of reality and one of hope. The first is this: it's just an ancient proverb. There is nothing certain but the uncertain. And so certainty is not something that we can escape. The COVID-19 pandemic is not something you created, is not something you control, and is not something, unlike some other things that have happened, that you can escape. It is affecting practically every part of the globe in a big way. And if there is any encouragement in that, is that you can't control what you don't control. And in many ways, it's a call to not give up, but give it up and look at what you can. The second quote is from Florence Nightingale: apprehension, uncertainty, waiting, expectation, fear of surprise do a patient more harm than any exertion. And one of the worst things that you can do, and the title of this presentation is If, it talks about two particular environments that are asserting themselves on all of us across the globe, and that is isolation and fear. And if we sit in those environments, as Florence Nightingale so aptly points out, the dangers and the harms are far greater than making choices around some things that we do control in those environments. And that is what this message is going to be all about. My thought is this: if you need to go through, and we do need to, there's no escaping this. I'm a speaker, and normally if Canada was hit with a pandemic, or I guess it wouldn't be a pandemic, was hit with a crisis on a medical emergency, I could go speak somewhere else, but there's nowhere for me to go. So for many of us, the world has come tightening around us, and we feel like we're backed into a corner. And honestly, that's how we feel. There's nothing wrong with that. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Apprehension, uncertainty, waiting, expectation, fear of surprise do a patient more harm than any exertion. This message is about what you can do. And so, if you need to go through, then at least accrue. Here are some of the things that you can accrue. This quote from John Finley: maturity is the capacity to endure uncertainty. And so one of the gifts out of this time is that you're going to become more mature. And as Bruce Lee aptly said, fear comes from uncertainty. We can eliminate the fear within us when we know ourselves better. And one of the gifts that can be found in this time of uncertainty and this pandemic and COVID and all its consequences, I believe, is that you're going to find your foundation. You have the ability, if you walk through and separate your fear from what you can see, that as you find your foundation, both on a personal level and if you're a corporate leader on a corporate level, it's going to be your competitive advantage for years to come. So let's continue on. Finding uncertainty, or finding certainty in the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic and other crises you may face in your life is the goal of this. So this one tends to be overarching, overwhelming, but really, when we talk about facing uncertainty, it's amazing how individually we can feel these crises at different points in our life. And what we're going to talk about applies to whenever this is going to come up for you. Because while there is some pain, there is also some gain that can be gained out of the right approach when we're facing uncertainty. I already chatted that today's uncertainty is great because of the IF combo. And so when it comes to isolation and fear, we need to know the what and the how about managing it. And so why not talk about that? When we talk about isolation, they create some natural flows. Increasingly, it pulls you away from people, and increasingly it makes engagement harder to do. you know what, isolation in just little bits can actually be healthy when we're just getting away to refresh and renew. That's one thing. And even as an extrovert, those drives and those, those times alone are important to me, and they're times of rejuvenation. We're experiencing a time where increasingly people are, you know, forced to work out of their homes, be in their homes. Maybe they're alone in their homes. Maybe they're stuck with a bunch of people in their home, and that's unique dynamic of isolation with crowdedness, and it has its own consequences. But it is true that isolation increasingly pulls us away from the people, and that it makes it harder to re-engage. I have to share a story about a neighbor yesterday who was fed up with this self-isolation, and so she declared that there would be a block wine and cheese party, or at least a neighborhood wine and cheese party, where each house would bring out a bottle of wine, bring out their own food, stay well past the social distancing guidelines of 6 meters, but have the chance to enjoy what was a sunny, warm day and actually converse with each other. And for those that attended, it was awesome. And it was a time of renewal, and that face to face that you get that on Zoom, but it's not the same. But as I phoned out with this impromptu event and I started to reach out to other neighbors that could have taken part, and neighbors that are normally extroverted and out there and always like on the scene, increasingly what I'm hearing is, Dave, sorry we didn't make it. I just didn't feel up to it. We can't manage our life by what we think and what we feel. When we stick to some truths, life tends to get a lot better. And I understand it, because that's isolation draws you away. Even if you're an extrovert, the danger is it's going to draw you into a place where it becomes really hard to re-engage. And there are going to be some things that we need to do to prevent that from happening. The other thing that isolation does is it supersizes thoughts in your life. For me, those drives that I take when I'm by myself, that's when I do my best thinking. Some music, a coffee, the road, some air. I get my best thoughts in the morning in the shower when I'm by myself, and just the warm water, floating down my back. That's when I'm at my most creative, and that's when my thoughts come. And so there's some good parts of isolation and bringing out creativity. But severe isolation, like we're experiencing right now, the danger with that is that as you get those thoughts, there's nowhere to go to test those thoughts. There's no one around you to test those thoughts. There's nothing around you to test those thoughts. Isolation lets those thoughts sort of simmer as your only thoughts. And as you focus on those thoughts, they can become real. And that's the tie-in to fear. You can't prevent fear. There are things in this life that make me afraid. I'm just asking you to not let fear stop you in your tracks. It is okay to walk afraid. All of you have seen likely this acronym for fear: false evidence appearing real. And that's what this combo does. The fear of finances, the fear of health. Am I going to lose my house? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to do all those things? And we're alone thinking those things can have some dangerous consequences if we allow them. Because those thoughts, when we focus on them and there's no one to test them, become beliefs. When in actuality, in most of the time, they are lies, and they drive our actions, because if we believe it to be true, we start to walk towards, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy towards those nightmares that are going on in our heads. The biggest example today is the stock market. And we saw how the threats of economic disruption from the coronavirus, sparked economic fears, and those fears had markets react with a downturn. And when the downturn started, that downturn amplified the fear in people. And with uncertainty, we don't know how low this is going to go. And so this stampede starts happening, where people just sell, 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 sell. And over the past weeks, we've seen some of the largest short-term declines in the stock market in history. And today's lesson is not about the stock market, but there is a metaphor, a powerful metaphor, to be applied to our lives. You see, reaction is different than response. And that stampede is a reaction to fear, and it often makes real what you feared when it didn't have to be that way. You see, not only in this one, but in past ones, if we take time to step back, the truth is, in the midst of panic selling, there are those who cut through the fear, and instead of seeing, how low this can go, and that there is no crystal ball, there is no guarantee, but they say, okay, the truth is, in the past, there is a morning after the night, that the sun does come up. And what they see is a Boxing Day sale sign. And while everyone else in the reaction is selling, 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 they're buying, 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 buying. And they're patient. And they know that in the medium long term, that response in the middle of uncertainty, that response to the face of fear, is actually something that's going to benefit them greatly in their lives. Life lesson is that reaction is based on fear and response is based on fact. And while there are no absolute guarantees, when you take the analogy of the stock market, the truth is it has always come back. And we don't know how long it takes or whatever, but if you have that time, there's opportunity in uncertainty, and there's opportunity in fear by what we choose to do. So how should we respond? That's the big question, and I want to address it on two levels. I want to address it on a personal level, and I want to address it on a corporate level. On a personal level, I want to encourage you to do two things. Number one, test your fears. See, this isolation, the danger is that there's no place, no one around you unless you have the energy, which increasingly is diminishing in you, to reach out to others. You're not going to test your thoughts, and you need to. And you need to test your thoughts towards finding certainty in uncertainty, which means what I can do. Your energy will pick up when you know what you can do. Your relationships with others will be better because you're going to be a better mood when you know what you can do. And it always isn't the best of news, and it's not the best of options, and it's not what we wished and what we hoped for. But when we find certainty in the midst of uncertainty, we become the calm in the storm, and it's going to attract great things to you. Test each fear, find out what you can do. Let's look at some practical examples in most Canadians' lives. Inquire for what can be done. A lot of people, you may be working from home, which is now different, and maybe a spouse or family members have been laid off in their jobs, as millions of Canadians are facing layoffs, and you start to worry about your mortgage and your taxes and your insurance, and you're focused on what you can't pay over the next little bit. And you assume that because you can't, that the normal consequences of can't, such as losing your home or, having to downgrade or having to do those things, aren't possible for you. But I'm here to remind you that the only gap between what's possible and what's not possible is asking the question. And isolation is trying to take it away from you, but great things are going to happen as you go out in this time. And it's against what you feel like doing, but go out and talk to your bank and find out more information from your local city around taxes, and talk to your insurance companies. And I think you'll find that they recognize this situation, and what you can do actually may benefit you for years to come. In our personal example, when we reached out to our banker on our mortgage, we are now saving $500 a month in our mortgage payment, and that's going to apply for the next 5 years, not just through COVID. And it's making things a lot easier. Why? Because a conversation was started. We didn't stay in isolation. And those opportunities exist for you. Now, let me go back. There is no guarantee. Sometimes your worst nightmares may come true, but the truth is, they rarely do. I can't guarantee you that they won't, but the chance is so infinitesimally small that I can almost guarantee that when you go and ask about what can be done around your mortgage, your taxes, your finances, around the benefits that governments are providing right now at every single level, a lot of times uncertainty, you hear about these benefits, but you're not sure if you qualify. And the tragedy would be for people to sit back and just assume that they don't. You don't know until you ask. Don't let isolation peg you into a corner and deprive you of these boats of help that are sailing past you, but you can't see because you haven't reached out. Do yourself a favor and communicate. What is stressing you out the most these days? Can you ask and inquire about what solutions are out there for you? And who you ask is important. Ask the people that can do something about it. Don't ask maybe, your pessimist friend who might automatically, take your catastrophe view of what might happen and make it worse. Go to your banker, go to your insurance company, go to your city hall, ask the people who can do something about it. And I think in these times, out of the bad, you're going to find a lot of gifts that are going to help it turn it into the good in the medium and long term. For leaders, here's my recommendations in the midst of fear and uncertainty is two things. Number one, be present. Number two, be real. And when we look at the global circumstance, it's amazing how leaders, and the pictures on this particular slide are just North American leaders, and these leaders couldn't be more different than each other. But each one of them, their popularity is rising. Why? Because on a daily basis, whether they're perfect or they're not, and we all have our judgments for each one of these, pretty strong feelings. They're present. And I'm going to say, as a leader, both in corporations and maybe of your family, as a father, as a mother, as a wife, as a husband, just being present has huge value. Just not running away, which isolation may want you to do. Walking through and stepping through what we think and what we feel in the moment, and just doing it anyways, to daily remind people about where things are at, what is being done, what can be done, and delivering that message. In life, it is so true in many respects that your success is more about your position than it is your perfection. For leaders, it means that you have a team and they're in maybe working from home, that it is more essential than ever. You cannot over communicate in this time. To, on a regular and intentional basis, like our leaders are communicating with us, is to communicate with your team. And we're going to talk about the huge benefits that you're going to gain in just a little bit. But can you have an intentional plan to communicate? And let's be honest, even if you're an extrovert, isolation will sometimes, and let's face it, many times, have you not feel like it. But as you reach out, there's going to be an unintended consequence. It's going to not only lift up the spirits of the people that you talk to and remind uncertainty, give some certainty to in the midst of uncertainty, but it's going to uplift you because there's value to that connection. And there's things that you get out of that connection. And it's not about having an unrealistic message. It's not about being unreal. It's just about being present. Be real. Share what you can. Share what you do know. That's what our leaders are doing today. And that's why their popularity is rising. And it doesn't mean that it's a good message. But the truth is, even what normally would be considered a bad message is likely way better than the horror film that's going on in their head that isolation is only further amplifying the drama of. There's power for corporate leaders to be present, and there's power for them to be real. Be present, be real. We're going to beat this thing called COVID-19. And the truth is, your future uncertainties, they're a season. And after the night, there's always a morning. But let's not lose sight of the potential gift of the night. You see, like an ocean, there's tides that come in and come out, and COVID-19 came in, and it will go out. But here's my encouragement to you, and here's actually my challenge to you. Be careful what you go back to after we win this fight. Be careful what you go back to after we win this fight. You see, I think that this time offers you a chance to find your foundation. It is very forcefully stripping away so many things in our life and just leaving us with a bare rock to stand on, that it's your opportunity to find out what's not important or hasn't been important that you've been filling your days with. When it comes to my foundation personally, it really comes down to two things. It's my faith and people, my interaction and relationships. Um, Here's the thing is that when I'm focused on those two things, other things just naturally come. And so, there's a proverb that says, seek ye first, and all these things will be added unto you. That applies to our lives personally, and that applies to corporate leaders. When I just find peace in my faith and my relationship with God, and when I intentionally go past my feelings of just wanting to sit on the couch and not connect, and I reach out and I am of service and I'm a listening ear and I find listening ears in the relationships around me, it's amazing how finances get taken care of. It's amazing how bills get paid. It's amazing how opportunities come up. And I think as it is for me, it can be for you. Our foundation is all going to be different. I'm not telling you that mine should be yours, but I'm asking you to figure out what's important to you. And I think this time is actually giving you a ton of clues, more than any other time would, about what your foundation is. And let me make the translation: what's truly important to you. You've got the time in isolation, so can you step back and by yourself, and also corporately with your partner, with your husband, your wife, your family, with friends, just maybe answer a few of these questions. What do you miss? What's your heart really throbbing for because you don't have it right now? COVID-19 and the consequences of it have stripped you of that, and it's bugging you that you don't have it. What are those things? Write them down. The second question is, what don't you miss? We are all guilty. I'm guilty. This North American attitude, and I love where we live, and I would not change it. There's a lot of good that comes with it. I'm not putting it down, but it is better to be fruitful than to be busy. And I find that we just fill our lives with stuff, in an effort to be able to say to our friends, "Yeah, man, I'm up to here." We've got one life, one shot at this thing. Uh, and I encourage you that your life, it will have way more purpose when it's fruitful than it's when it's simply busy. What stresses you out more these days? Where do you find peace? In what things are you finding peace right now? And then after you write down answers to those questions, what does it say to you about what is important to you? And for me, it's just reinforced those two pillars. My faith gives me peace. My relationships give me peace and give me strength. And here's the importance of the focus on the important, importance of finding your foundation. It goes to the 80-20 rule. It just says, the 80-20 rule says that 20% of your activities give you 80% of your results. And if you could just focus on those, then it's amazing how some of the other stuff just takes care of itself. And you find yourself in a place of more peace, more focus, more patience, more energy, and life just gets better. Do not lose the opportunity of the season. It has stripped away so many things from our lives. That is your chance now, if you haven't done it before, to choose what you put back when we win this. And I think if you found the foundation of what's important to you, and it's based on your strengths, both from a personal level and a corporate level, and you start to choose what you put back, and you start to make different choices about what life after this crisis looks like, it'll be your competitive advantage for years and decades to come. It'll be foundational for success and fulfillment and purpose in the rest of your life. The moral of the story, as it says on the slide, focus on the important and non-important stuff tends to take care of itself. Wouldn't that be cool? This season is empowering that choice for you. And I'm asking you to consider it and to grab it. There has never been a better time because we don't have an opportunity. There's not many places to go. There's not many things to distract ourselves with. And we're getting a ton of data by when we feel peace and when we don't, and what we miss and what we don't. Don't manage your life on what you think and what you feel, but manage it on the truth and data. And it tends to get a lot better. Life's giving that to you right now. My question is, what are you going to learn from it? What are you going to do with it? And if you do, you're going to thank this time. And you're going to redeem this time. Find your foundation as a team. If you're a corporate leader, uh, just as our political leaders have increased in popularity, there's nothing like a crisis actually to build a team. And so, if you're on the front lines, whether you're a firefighter or you're a policeman or you're a nurse or you're a doctor, and you're on the front lines in environments that involve trauma almost on a daily basis. This current pandemic has produced trauma on a scale like we've never seen it in people's lives. You realize that in trauma, it creates brotherhood and sisterhood. I talked to a local leader recently, and she's married to a fireman, and she said, one thing I needed to get used to, because I love my man dearly, is that there's 3 people in my marriage. There's me, him, and then there's the team. I think as a leader, it's not about your perfection. It's not about a master plan. This environment will naturally do it to you if you just follow my advice and my encouragement to be present with your people and have that communication plan that says, I'm just going to be with them in this time, and I'm going to encourage them to be with each other and ensure that they're with each other in this time. It's going to create a bond, and it's going to create a culture that's going to be your competitive advantage. And again, it's not about the perfect, it's about being present. It's a natural outflow. Every environment has its flows of behavior that it creates. Crises bonds people if you'll just be present for it. As a corporate leader, this is a special time for your team. When they get through this together, don't be surprised if they stay together in the good times and are more focused to amplify their success in the good times, even when they don't have to stay together. On a corporate level, interesting stat, research shows that if annually look at each task you regularly do and ask the customer of that task, the end recipient of that task, whether it's internal or whether it's external, how important that is for them anymore, that 15% of what you currently do, you can just stop doing because no one cares. And so again, corporately, you're being stripped. There's a lot of things that you can't do that you used to fill your days with, or it becomes more difficult to do. And that may not be a curse. It may be a blessing if you ask these 2 questions. What is this time teaching me about what is important and what is not? And what does it tell me about what I should go back to after this particular crisis? I believe in redeeming times like these. And there's an old quote that says, your mess will become your message. That's the message that I'm delivering today, is that in the midst of uncertainty and the midst of crisis, there are certain things you can do, and they're actually not all that hard to do from a strictly doing standpoint. They require more courage than fear. They require more community than they do personal excellence. But seize this time, because out of this mess, which is in global scale, you have the opportunity to find your foundation, find your message, and build a sustainable competitive advantage for years to come. Wishing you and your families every health, every safety, and almost like it's Christmas, wishing that you open up every single gift box that's currently sitting under your tree, because you deserve it. Appreciate you. Wishing you all the best.